We have with us environmentalist and founder of Awaz Foundation, Ms. Sumaira Abdulali. Thank you for talking to me, Ms. Sumaira. Uh,
Thank you for inviting me.
it's our pleasure. So the first question to you that I would like to put is, what unique vulnerabilities have you observed for women regarding pollution exposure?
Well, women are placed uniquely because they are the ones who not only have to look out for themselves, but have to look out for their families, children, elderly people, and everybody else. And they are also placed uniquely in that in certain sections, the access to medical health care is also more restricted for women. At the same time, their intervention in policies is also restricted. So they are the sufferers who sometimes don't have an equal voice in what is being created and how to mitigate it. They're the ones who are cooking, they're the ones who are going to face the brunt of any problems with their children. If their children get asthma, if their elderly parents are sick, that's the women. And that's not even counting what it does to them themselves.
So, how does air pollution specifically impact women's health, besides respiratory issues, including reproductive health and maternal mortality?
Air pollution affects every single part of our bodies and therefore all aspects of health. So, respiratory health is the most commonly understood because the link is immediate. We all know that air pollution gives you lung cancer, just like smoking does. But it also, because it infiltrates through the lungs, it enters the bloodstream and reaches every part of your body. So it gives you issues in your maternity health, because if you're sick, obviously you're going to have low birth weight. You're going to have other issues. It can give you every other kind of disease that you can possibly link it with, including um, including diabetes, including everything, not just respiratory, but cancer and every other type of disease. Because air pollution doesn't only mean that you're breathing in polluted air, it means that that polluted air has certain components in it which could be toxic in even individually, even if they were used in other ways than air pollution. For example, it can have very, very toxic elements, including sulfur, including dioxides of various chemicals, including even mercury at times, or cadmium when firecrackers are being used, or other things which affect you overall. It can even affect your brain function.
Can you elaborate on the impact of air pollution on women's economic participation and productivity, particularly in the outdoor work or informal sectors?
Well, both outdoor and indoor women are impacted, because indoor they're impacted because they're often cooking with dirty fuels, which is then restricted in a very small space. But even outdoors, they're often doing a lot of very laborious manual labor, whether it's in the fields or whether it's in other sectors like construction, where they are exposed to air pollution all the time. And then when they get sick, they have less healthcare than the men have. And while they are sick, they also have to care for other family members who may be sick with them. Typically, a woman in a rural area would take a child out with her to work. And even in a city like Delhi, it's not uncommon to see children with the women begging on the roads or in other places. So there have been certain studies which say that, for example, women who live, or people who live in more affluent areas and who can close their windows, are less affected, and that includes women. And again, because of the more restricted access to healthcare, they will suffer most. Um, they also suffer more because of the way their bodies are constructed, the fact that they have to bear children, that during that period, they may get sick, and some of these diseases can be transmitted through the placenta and affect the babies even before they are born. We know this is true for serious drugs which are banned, like cocaine or like other drugs, that children can be born addicted. But I think the fact that children can also suffer from diseases caused by air pollution. These things are being more recently studied. Economically, women have less access to money. They are typically paid less for doing the same labor as men for longer hours. Typically, they combine that labor with more household duties as well, and that takes a toll on their own health as well as on their earnings overall to manage their own health and the earnings that they have available to them to manage the health of their family. In the event of them falling sick or any disaster, their work doesn't go away, and often they continue working, which makes them and their families worse. And it also creates problems for women because they have less access to mitigation measures. They have less access to the policies which will allow this situation to improve overall. And I think that's very important to work on, that the economic health, and studies again have shown that air pollution has resulted not only in health and deaths, but in loss of productivity, work days, and money. So which would definitely impact women again much more than men, given the baseline starting points.
So, in what ways does this impact also limit women's ability to participate in public life and decision-making processes related to environmental issues?
Well, if you are more sick and have less money and less time, then your access to decision making will be much more restricted anyway. And that is to do, not even counting the fact that there's a whole host of other reasons why they are not included. Not only their own position, perhaps, if you want to call it that, within a family structure, which gives them primary responsibility without economic uh, ability, but also the structure of society as a whole, which generally speaking has less room for women. Even though women are more impacted, and even though very often they have more knowledge about how to handle these kind of issues, because they are the ones who are dealing with them on a day-to-day basis for themselves and their family, and even for their men, because when the men fall sick, the women are looking after them. But that's in the point of being able to do things on the ground. When it comes to making the policies which are creating the sickness and the economic disparity and the all the rest of it, it's the men who decide the policies. So there's a huge gap there. And this gap is not only to do with air pollution. This gap is a very well-known gap which is being greater addressed in society as a whole. But air pollution being the single most, named by the UN as the single most uh, health risk for people in the world today. 50% anyway are women, but because of the disparity, women face much more than 50% of the burden. So far as air pollution goes, the need to have them up there making the policy is much more important even than in other sectors, like in a corporate sector, I would say.
What are the most crucial policy recommendations for mitigating the impact of air pollution on women and girls?
Well, the first is to empower women and girls to be up there making those policies. That's the biggest empowerment of all. And giving them the economic strength to be able to stand up to their men and say, we don't agree with you. And we think things should be done differently and have a voice which will be heard. But those are very large scale asks, and they are slow in implementation. So I would say that while we catch up there, while the women are going to tell the men how to handle air pollution policies, um, in the meantime, we need men also to step forward and to make policies which are women friendly in the interest of their own mothers, daughters, and make sure that, for example, polluting industries are kept away. Sectors like construction, which do pollute, and which we do need construction, even though we know they pollute, are the money spent in the construction sector is equivalent to the money spent in making sure it doesn't pollute. It's not that you can do some half-hearted measure to tackle pollution while keeping on a huge sum of money for while constructing. And this holds true not only of building construction, but we have to remember that government is the largest constructor of all. All infrastructure projects are done either directly by government or through JVs with other companies, and they are the ones who make the policies. So we need to make sure that the men in government ensure that air pollution is kept in check while doing these policies, that there is enough money allocated to air pollution, and that they keep inducting more and more women. So construction is a huge sector. Then there is paddy burning, which is a huge issue in Delhi. And again, most of the farmers are men, and most of the people making the farm policies are men. Again, it's the women who do the manual labor in the farms and also suffer the air pollution resultant health effects. So I think again there's a scope to make sure that women are made aware of what burning paddy can do, and women are given a voice to make sure that it doesn't happen, so to protect their own families. There are other sources, like there are power plants using coal. There are other industries which create pollution. And again, in the absence of an equal women-led workforce in those industries and policies made towards those, which we hope we'll work towards, but not yet, we need the men to step up and make sure that the industries do not create pollution, again, in the interest of their own families and the women in their families.
And is there anything you wish that more people, particularly policymakers and the public, understood about the unique challenges that women face due to air pollution, besides the ones that you've mentioned?
I think policymakers and people in general, I wish they understood more related to the challenges faced by women in general, of which air pollution is leading. And so I think the same challenges which apply also apply to air pollution. We need women to step up, and we need to educate our girls so that they become the ones to step up. Unfortunately, it's happening very slowly, and in some sectors, not enough at all in the sector of environment and pollution. Um, Having said that, it's not surprising that some of the major initiatives on pollution are led by women. Even through all the disparities and problems which women face, CSE in Delhi is headed by a woman, Sunita Narayan, and the woman who's heading air pollution related issues in Delhi, Anumita Roy Chaudhary, is a woman. I'm not surprised at all. There's a woman who's making meters to check, because she shared with me that she started making these meters because she saw her own children suffering, and as a woman, as a mother, she had to figure out whether her children could go outdoors to play that day or not. So she started making these air pollution meters, which have not been accepted by the government as being valid as yet. Having said that, the meters are in use. They are being used by mothers all over the country and in Delhi to make sure at their own level, for their own children, for their own households. And I hope that these kind of policies, women-led policies, will find a greater and more mainstream space. I think women everywhere should stand up and demand that space. There's a group called Warrior Moms. Again, they have a headquarters, and I don't know whether it's their headquarters, but they certainly have a group in Delhi who is working to check specifically that their families are not exposed to air pollution. And these groups need to expand more and more, and they need to become more mainstream and find legitimacy in deciding policy for the state, for the country, and for all of us.
So, as you mentioned about one of the mothers who's uh, gotten out pollution meters, have you encountered any other personal stories or experiences about women who've been affected particularly by air pollution?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's again, I think, a very normal thing to happen. I think in Mumbai, the air pollution next to the garbage dump, the opposition to that is being led by a woman called Anita. And there are many other women who are fighting for these issues. In fact, uh, women face all kinds of backlash as well, because they are told that they are too sensitive, or too this or too that, or not really capable of making policy. But they are out there, they are making the policy. And when the policy is not being accepted by men, they're still out there encouraging other people to step up and demand that even with or without the policy that they are protected. They are not being heard enough, but with a little bit of further push, they will be heard more and more. It's not surprising either that many of the lawyers taking up these issues are also women.
As we come to the end, looking ahead, what are you most hopeful about in terms of addressing the air pollution crisis and ensuring a healthier future for women, especially in developing countries?
I think we are developing countries in some ways, but we are very developed. I'm talking of India in other ways, because we have women out there who are out there making the change happen. So I hope that more and more women will step up. And by women, I mean across the board. I mean the corporate women who today think that, many of whom think that it's their job only to be in the business world and not step outside that, will realize that air pollution is affecting them on a day-to-day basis and their families, and will be able to use their corporate expertise, their professional expertise to make a change there. I hope that the politicians and bureaucrats who are women similarly will realize that this is really important. At the same time, there's a large number of housewives, middle class housewives, who spend much of their time looking after their families, and who would be able to find time to do this as well. And I hope that they will join the gang. And most importantly of all, I hope that tribal women, women suffering the impacts of, say, coal mining in forests where typically the air has been clean, but now is completely polluted by coal and by other things, even in rural areas, will also step up. And they are stepping up. Tribal women, women who are socially, economically challenged, socio-economically challenged, are stepping up. I hope to see more and more numbers of them from in every single sector who will come forward and demand that we have clean air and ensure that our policies give us that clean air.